Story 1. I am 51 years old. My fiancée was murdered in 1997. The police never caught the person responsible. That haunts me. No justice, no closure. Story 2. My dad died when I was 20 from cancer. From diagnosis to death, it was about 9 months. He was my best friend and my inspiration for becoming a journalist. Now I am an editor at a print magazine I am very proud of, and I know he would be too. Story 3. I lost my 4-month-old nephew to sudden infant death syndrome. I never got to hold him because of COVID-19, so we did many video calls. He passed away, and I only got to see his ashes in person. Story 4. I am an old man now. There are too many to list. I was going to start typing, but I do not even know where to start. I know I am ready to go, so at least that way the pain will finally end. Story 5. I am 34 years old. Raped in 2009. Blackmailed in 2011. Child molestation in 2017. Death threats in 2017. Cheated on in 2020. Homelessness in 2020. Stillborn in 2020. Life goes on. It does not matter what happens. You wake up the next day and try to make it a better day than the last and assume tomorrow will be good. Story 6. My parents died a couple of months ago. I have barely any family at this point, and I am preparing to put my beloved cat down. My therapist is going to make a lot of money from me. Story 7. At 28, overdosed and died at 23, flatlined for about 5 minutes. Woke up to a second chance at life and have lived with a very thankful outlook every day since. Story 8. I'm 36. My father took his own life when I was 9. I just started processing that in therapy in October last year. Story 9. I am 28. I lost a part of myself when I spent the majority of my late teens and early 20s drinking too much. I have been sober for 2 years now. Story 10. I am 40 years old, and after having a miscarriage, we got pregnant with our son. At the 20-week ultrasound, we found out that he had a heart condition that would require surgery when he was born. I suddenly developed severe preeclampsia and was airlifted to the hospital. We were stable until we were not. During a checkup, they said if we did not deliver him immediately, neither of us would survive the weekend. He was born 2 months early and was doing well in the neonatal intensive care unit. He had a simple heart procedure that went well at 14 days old. 6 hours later, at 6 in the morning, I received a call that he was crashing and they were performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I rushed to the hospital and found 20 staff members outside his room and another 10 inside working on him. He passed away in my arms less than 30 minutes later. I love and miss him so much. Our first and only baby, forever loved. Story 11. When I was 21 and serving in Afghanistan, my roommate was killed in action. 6 others were seriously injured in a devastating ambush. I think about it every single day of my life. Story 12. I am 31. When I was 20, my father died, presumably of a heart attack while shoveling snow. My stepmother found him in the front yard hours later. 11 months later, my stepfather also died from a heart attack while shoveling snow. Needless to say, we do not shovel anymore. Another recent tragedy. Last year, I almost died giving birth to my first baby. She then spent 5.5 months in the neonatal intensive care unit. But now she is a mostly healthy, perfectly happy, almost 1-year-old. Story 13. The older I get, the more they add up. Getting a call in the morning that someone you know had a heart attack, going to the bathroom at night, someone telling you they're sick and not going to get better. You learn to react to it, how to cope with it. You also learn to enjoy the time you spend with friends and family. The worst are kids. The 4-year-old a few doors down was feeling ill. His mom kept him home from school, checked on him an hour later, and he was gone. My sister-in-law lost her child on the day it was supposed to be born. My wife had a miscarriage. I've lost friends to drugs and depression. That's tough. You see them slide off the deep end, and you feel like you're trying to hold on to a wet bar of soap. My friend was a Marine and went to Somalia. He couldn't talk about the things he'd experienced there. He lived alone. One day, he was found hanging in the stairwell. My brother's friend died of cancer. Every time I saw him, he lost a bit more of himself. His arm, his eye, his jaw, until he just died. My mother-in-law died of cancer just before my first son was born. She broke her hip at our wedding because it was eaten away. My mom died in a car crash. My dad was driving. I'll never forget that call. My brother rushed to the scene of the accident while I went to the hospital. I don't think there's a way to rank the worst experiences. Trauma has a way of training you to cushion the impact. So perhaps the first hurts the most, or the sudden ones you don't see coming. But it also has a way of accumulating. Sometimes you're at a funeral of someone who died peacefully after 90 years of good living, and you just can't stop crying, which I see as a good thing. Story 14. I lost both my parents, but my father's death was more traumatic. He suffered a hemorrhagic stroke that caused him to bleed from his mouth and ears in the emergency room. Story 15. At 72, my biggest loss was the death of my beloved dog Albert. He was the sweetest, most friendly, and smartest pet imaginable. Towards the end, I did not realize he was sick with kidney failure and got impatient with him, thinking he was being stubborn and uncooperative. I yelled at him and pushed him along on his walks. After another day, I took him to our veterinarian and learned that he was dying. I have never forgiven myself. Story 16. I am in my early 60s and lost my brother, 3 cousins whom I dearly loved, and my oldest friend to coronavirus disease. Words cannot describe how painful it was hearing their final words on the telephone from my Massachusetts apartment. I had the same conversation 5 times as they were entering the intensive care unit. I expected to have family and friends to explore hobbies and travel with during my retirement, and now I am alone with more money than I ever thought I would have in my life, with no one to share it with. Story 17. I am 55. My sister died when I was 4. Before anyone says I should be over it by now like most people do, you don't. In fact, it has affected my entire adult life. My parents broke up after she died because my mother blamed my father, who was babysitting at the time. I lost my sister, who was a year old, and never saw my father again. I was raised by a distraught mother on her own. No wonder I have abandonment issues and multiple mental illnesses. Oh well, soldier on. Story 18. In December, I lost my cat who had been with me since before I was born. I still burst into tears thinking about her. Story 19. I am in my late 20s, and 2 of my nieces were not growing at the correct rate before birth. They did not survive, unfortunately. Story 20. Being abused as a child to the point that I developed borderline personality disorder. Raped and sexually abused as a teenager and adult as well. Story 21. 20 years old. I grew up in a context that, when you put it all together, is not a good combination. One is having experienced war since I was a child, and the other is that I have Asperger's syndrome. In my family, I had 3 uncles who died in combat because of terrorist groups. I saw right-wing and left-wing parties commit atrocities in the name of peace. From a young age, I grew accustomed to hearing news stories like a group caused a massacre in such and such a place. People who, deep down, were just exploiting others' egos by making them believe their ideology would bring peace. I was threatened by terrorists for refusing to join them in exchange for a salary. I almost died, but what affected me the most was when I had an altercation with a man armed with a semi-automatic weapon. This made me paranoid. There came a point when I started to believe that anyone could be dangerous, especially since some hooded men had blown up a van near where I live. Furthermore, because of what happened with the semi-automatic weapon, when I nearly lost my life, I became deeply depressed and scared, because during those weeks, a friend, a civil defense officer, was also killed. So I asked myself, does paradise really exist? What is there after death? At that moment, I literally lost faith. When you do not know where you will go after you die and have no hope for anything, it is a horrible experience that I do not recommend to anyone, as I had to see a psychologist several times for these reasons. Additionally, we explored the field of neurodivergence, which, due to various issues, has affected me since I was little. At 6 years old, I attended a traditional school where children were beaten for incorrect answers. Because of my neurodivergence, I had a hard time pronouncing basic things like the letter R. So the teacher physically attacked me every time I answered incorrectly. Despite being good at math and reading, the teacher still humiliated me in front of everyone while hitting me. I do not want to go into more details about the things I have experienced because I do not fully understand my condition, and they break my heart. Even so, I try to be happy. I do not consider my life completely tragic because I have had good experiences, like fulfilling several dreams and experiencing good things. Story 22. I am 67 years old, and my greatest concern is that Donald Trump is currently undermining all the positive progress made since World War II. Story 23. I'm 29 and I had an ectopic pregnancy after a miscarriage. I feel like it wouldn't have been so difficult, but the mass was sized wrong, so the methotrexate did not abort the embryo like it should have. I had 2 months of constant blood tests, vaginal ultrasounds, trying to explain to my insurance what was happening, and so much pain. Finally, after 3 trips to urgent care because I kept having pain, a doctor insisted to my obstetrician gynecologist who had been dismissing my case because my body is just absorbing the mass. It turns out the embryo was too big to be dissolved, and I was in emergency surgery the next day. It really should have ruptured, but it did not. I had many nightmares during and after that. I was hemorrhaging and dying in my sleep. I was also grieving not 1 but 2 pregnancies, and I eventually went into postpartum psychosis and almost killed myself with my toddler in the house. Luckily, I was able to get help from my therapist, friends, and family, but the whole experience was extremely scary and traumatic. It led to a bipolar I disorder diagnosis, which I had been struggling with for 10 years but was previously misdiagnosed as depression. I feel like I should clarify. My obstetrician gynecologist dismissed me because my body should have absorbed the mass. But the urgent care doctor insisted, saying, "It's obviously not going anywhere. She needs surgery." Some people were also insensitive with their words. The nurse giving me the methotrexate asked, "Before I give this, was this wanted?" How am I supposed to answer that? I never got a choice to decide. I also heard things like, "Poor baby. I hope they didn't feel pain." No, it was literally a tumor and in no way a baby. Please stop making me feel terrible. I know people meant well, but it was very hard. Story 24. I lost both of my parents when I was an infant. I was then placed in an orphanage. More recently, my mother-in-law, a high school teacher, was shot and killed in a school shooting. That was tragic for our family. Story 25. I am 25 years old. When I was 5, my neighbor raped me. In 2018, my cousin was killed by a drunk and drug driver while coming home from work. At 17, I was dragged into a bush and sexually assaulted at a festival. I was sexually assaulted again at my workplace when I was 21. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and sometimes it is hard to get out of bed. Story 26. I am 42 years old. I was widowed at age 29 when both of our children were very young. My late husband experienced a sudden, very violent drug-induced psychosis and died by suicide in front of me and our daughter. Our daughter was too young to remember it. Thank God. 13 years later, we are all doing okay. The phrase, "this too shall pass," was my mantra for a very long time. Story 27. Depends on what you mean by hardest. A handful come to mind. The one that had the most profound, complex, and lasting impact on my life was the childhood emotional and physical abuse by my stepfather. Partly because it was objectively an awful experience, but even more so because I felt powerless and trapped, with no way out. Of course, like all childhood trauma, it created lingering effects into my adult life that I was not initially fully aware of. Story 28. When I was 26, my father died at 66 years old. At 35, my mother passed away at 69. My younger brother passed away at 46 in 2017. I was 10 years older than he was. He was the 6th child in our family. It was a sudden death, horrible. It was made worse because I was in hospital in another city and could not attend the funeral. Last summer, my next oldest sister, who was 3 years older, died within 2 months of a very aggressive cancer. She was 66. I have 3 older siblings who are 6 years, 10 years, and 14 years older than me. We have an awesome son who is 33. He is an angel. I have had chronic illnesses since my 20s and seem to pick up a new one or two every decade. When I was 56, my health fell apart, starting with congestive heart failure, leading to me now being bedridden because of severe arthritis. I have many other chronic conditions. My husband, who is 10 years older, was actually my caregiver until he became terribly ill last year. We had to move to a personal care home, which is okay, but all independence is gone. It kind of felt better letting that all out to strangers. Story 29. 2 years ago, I lost my first dog. She was 15 years old. That same week, my father was in the hospital struggling to recover from numerous health issues. We received a call that he had a heart attack, stopped breathing for at least 20 minutes, and had no hope of recovery. We booked tickets to fly home. Friday was my dog's last veterinary appointment. Saturday, we flew home. On Sunday, Father's Day, we had to remove my father's life support. Neither loss was sudden. My dog was 15 and a half years old with advanced arthritis. Medications were no longer helping, and she was showing signs of dementia. My father's health had been poor for years. He suffered a brain injury after aneurysm surgery, and his quality of life during the last 10 years was not good. He had been in a house fire which triggered many of his health issues. My biggest regret is that he spent his last 6 months in hospitals and rehabilitation centers. I believe he would have preferred to spend less time receiving treatment and more time at home. The positive part is that his birthday was the week before these events. I live across the country, but my sister set up a FaceTime call while she was visiting him. It was his last good day, and he was able to virtually see our house and our new rescue puppy, which we got earlier in the year. He was sharp, cracking jokes about me needing a haircut and asking about my job. I know not everyone gets to say goodbye. Thanks to my sister, I have that chance. Story 30, 53 and 3 suicides. They are terrible and totally unnecessary as far as I am concerned. Only one was truly intimate, but all were horrible. I understand free will, but these individuals were well loved. It is pretty harsh for everyone. Story 31. I am 60 years old, and this is the 50th anniversary of my mother's death. She had been sick with lymphoma for 8 years before passing. I am thankful I got to know her. She was very intelligent and taught me a lot about everything. I still miss her terribly. Story 32. Late 30s. I lost my entire youth. I had to be independent and earn money from the age of 16. No parties, no festivals, no teenage love, and far too many tough decisions in an environment where teenagers should not be, during a global recession. The moment I finally had both feet on the ground, COVID-19 came, and my life was put on hold for 4 years. That made me pretty bitter for a while. Now I have accepted it and enjoy what I can. Story 33. I am 48 years old. I am homeless, severely ill physically and mentally, and completely alone. Yesterday, the police came to the place I am staying, the ruins of a stable, because I had accumulated garbage there and neighbors complained. Thank God the officer was very kind, but he knows everything about me. Now I have a record. Just needed to vent. Story 34. I am 21. I would say unexpectedly losing my grandfather. My parents worked full-time, and I spent my early childhood being cared for by my maternal and paternal grandparents, who are thankfully still alive. Losing my father's father changed me for life. I felt like any innocent, happy outlook I had on life died along with him on that hospital bed. Although it sounds intense, it is true. I try to see the positive in day-to-day life because I know he would not want that kind of sadness for me. Story 35. My first girlfriend, with whom I had an intense but toxic year-long relationship, died by suicide a year after we broke up. Story 36. I lost an eye in 2007 due to domestic violence. I lost my house in 2013 to a tornado. In 2015, I almost died in a car accident and lost my aunt. In 2016, I split up with the father of my oldest child. In 2020, he was on the news for killing his girlfriend's child. In 2021, I lost my mom. I am 36 and feel like these are just the most traumatizing events off the top of my head. Story 37. I was going to post my thoughts, but after reading many heartbreaking comments, I want to say my heart goes out to everyone's experience and story. It looks like we are in this together. Imagine that. Story 38. I'm in my early 50s. My biggest loss is when our oldest child decided not to live anymore. They didn't leave any note. Story 39. My mother had a brain hemorrhage and died when I was 15. My father died when I was 32, a month after my wedding, from cancer. My brother died by suicide 18 months ago. I am 39. Story 40. I am 33 years old, and it was when my son was diagnosed with severe medical conditions at birth. He is 2 now, and we are happily living life, but I truly grieve everything I have missed out on, as well as what he and my family have missed out on due to his medical complications and hospital stays. Story 41. I am 40 and lost my wife to cancer on March 16th this year. She was 45. I would not wish this loss on my worst enemy. Our 2 boys and I are left to navigate the rest of our lives without her. It is very difficult. Story 42. I am 37 years old. In the span of 5 years, starting when I was 28, I lost 4 members of my extended family and my father. I have attended more funerals than weddings and baby showers combined. Story 43. I will be 39 in a few months. I buried my grandfather in March. I am currently trying to get some sleep in the intensive care unit with my grandmother fading from pneumonia and multiple organ failure. They basically raised me since I was about 2. I have been to 4 funerals already since March, including one for a friend who I graduated high school with and passed after surgery. Soon, I will be up to 5 funerals when it is my grandmother's time. I am exhausted. Story 44. My cousin overdosed and both my grandfathers have passed, but I can say I am pretty fortunate otherwise. I am blessed with some good people in my life. Story 45. At 19, my father burnt my school bag when I told him I was being bullied at school at age 5. The issues went unresolved, and today I am all alone, lacking social skills. My mother started making me cook at age 8 and left me home to babysit my younger brothers after she fired the maids. 4 academic years were wasted in a toxic household. My parents have been getting divorced and reconciling repeatedly. I am the eldest. My brothers and parents physically and mentally abuse me. I have no free will, have failed exams, and have no one to lean on. I feel invisible. Story 46. I am 62 and I cannot decide. Thing 1. Discovering that my eldest was molested by her biological father by the time she was 5. Setting into motion a chain of events that dominated our lives for decades. Edit. Her biological father passed away a couple of years ago. In the meantime, I also discovered, by accident, that she was abused in a much worse way by her stepfather. Just a few weeks ago, she testified against him in civil court and held him accountable. It is a long story. Thing 2. My son, a double black belt in Taekwondo at 14, first marimba player in the school band, promising theater technician student, an all-around lovely human being, was diagnosed with a genetic disorder that greatly changed his life for the worse. He is still the same lovely person, happily married and moving forward with a financially and intellectually rewarding career as well as a second degree. However, he remains subject to health limitations, including likely multiple major surgeries, the most recent of which was a couple of months ago. Story 47. Losing my mother to cancer when I was 30. I am 56 now. It is so sad not to have had a mother for so many of life's moments. My wedding, our son, my career success, my brother's death. Most days, I am just used to it and am grateful for all the great things she taught me and for having a loving mother. But it is still sad. Story 48. I'm 32. My grandfather on my father's side passed away when I was 18. A very good family friend passed away in 2023, and another family friend, an uncle, passed away in February 2024. My old friend and classmate, Deputy Ryan Klinkenbroomer, was shot and killed almost 2 years ago. The love of my life passed away in 2015 in a car accident, and her father passed away in November 2018. I have experienced a lot of loss, but I am still here for now. Story 49. First, doctors diagnosed my father with chronic kidney disease. They gave him a month to live or to try a more aggressive treatment and hemodialysis. Then we had to sell most of our assets to find someone willing to donate his kidney as quickly as possible before more time passed. We found a donor, and within a year he underwent a transplant. After 2 years, he had an accident and developed sepsis. First, they amputated one leg, then the other, so he was bound to a wheelchair. I took him to get leg prostheses. He was very motivated and willing to keep living. At the 5th year, in one of his routine checkups with the doctors, they told him that it looked like his body was rejecting the organ. He became depressed. Then my brother was kidnapped, and we had to pay to get him released by the cartel. We used all our savings, sold cars and most of what we had, and asked our close relatives and friends for help to raise the amount of money they were requesting. Otherwise, they would have killed my brother. Once we had all the requested sum, my father and I had to go deliver the money, risking that they could also take us and make us disappear. Thank God, the next day they released my brother. After my brother was released, my father died about 15 days later from a brain hemorrhage. My brother had to go to another country and apply for political asylum. I lost my father after many years of living with him and taking care of him. My family became separated, and now I take care of my mother. Since that happened, everything has been going badly for me. This happened in 2023, and my economic situation has been bad since then. I honestly keep going because my mother is with me. Living in a place like Mexico is hard. Story 50. I am 30. My grandfather was my biggest loss. He passed away 8 years ago, and he was a father figure to me since I have not seen my dad since I was 3. The bond with my mother is difficult due to her personality disorders, so I guess I have lost all my parental figures. Story 51. Losing my father in January at 33, just after finding out I was pregnant with my second child, has been very hard to process and cope with, especially since my grandmother, who is 92, is still alive. It was painful watching her kiss his head goodbye. Story 52. I am 50. My mother died of cancer 3 years ago. I was there. She was the central force in our family, and nothing is the same now. It was not that I did not realize or appreciate her role in our lives, but the reality hit like a whole planet's worth of bricks when she was really not there anymore. Dealing with my father without her as a mediator and translator has been awkward and difficult. Just tonight, I was lamenting the worst workday I have had in quite a while, the kind of news that has repercussions for years, and I just wanted my mother. Story 53. Around 8 years ago, I learned that one of my friends took his life, and I didn't hear about it from any other friend. I read about it on Facebook. That led me down a strange spiral of questioning. Was I to blame? Could I have saved him if I acted sooner? Then, within days, my girlfriend was so disappointed in me that she asked if I knew how to be a friend. That question hit me hard, leading to years of looping thoughts. I knew I had to leave and do something else, whatever it may be. I saw 3 therapists, visited several flotation sensory deprivation centers, went to a couple of yoga centers, and used a couple of meditation apps, hopefully making up for the money I spent with them. Every day, I am grateful for my past self for not choosing the same path that he did. Story 54. 49 years ago, but it felt like yesterday that I lost my younger brother. That same day, my mother was diagnosed with cancer and passed away a month and a half later. Story 55. My best friend died in a car accident. He was the only person in the car. I was devastated but was in drug treatment, so I grieved fairly normally. Additionally, my girlfriend was pregnant with our second child, so I had that to look forward to and to help cheer me up when I felt down. As it turns out, shortly before he wrecked the car, just hours before, the woman he was seeing saw him receiving messages from my girlfriend saying things like, "I know it's not his. I haven't had sex with him lately as much as with you." She confronted him. He was already intoxicated. Story 56. I watched my grandmother on my father's side deteriorate from inoperable cancer. I only got to see and meet her when she was dying due to my mother's selfishness. She wanted to know me so badly, and I had no idea until she was almost dead. Story 57. When I was 15, one of my closest friends committed suicide. The last time I saw her, as we were parting ways, she gave me a really unusual, super heartfelt goodbye and kept reassuring me that she loved me, like she really wanted me to know it. I remember thinking it was weird and telling her I love her too. I wish I had seen the signs, but at the time it wasn't even on my radar. She was the most amazing, free-spirited friend. The first person I knew who was fearlessly herself and inspired me to be too. The day it happened, I was called out of a high school class by security and told to go to the main office, which was very unusual. All the main office said was that my mother was coming to get me. Someone told me not to look at my phone until my mother came. I remember feeling so anxious. It was a cloudy day, and I had no idea what was happening. When I walked out to my mother's car, she was crying and all she said was my friend's name. And I knew. About 6 to 7 months later, another one of my closest friends was killed as a passenger in a freak car accident. The last comment he had posted on my then social media page said that I was like a dictionary because I brought meaning to his life. He was first and foremost a silly goose who made everyone laugh, brightened everyone's day, and inspired my music taste to this day. The day of the accident, word was spreading that there was a car accident involving kids from his high school. I remember flipping frantically between local news stations, waiting for coverage, praying it wasn't him, convincing myself it couldn't be him, calling his phone repeatedly. Then someone called to let me know he was in the car. I actually fell to the floor screaming. My legs just became jelly. That whole time in my life is a complete blur. One tragic loss after another before I could pull myself together. Of the 5 friends' phone numbers I had memorized at the time, they were 2 of them. I am so grateful to my parents and the therapist who helped me through it, but it still makes me cry, and I still miss them often. Losing them left a forever scar on my life. I'm in my 30s now, and I recently struggled to process that they have both been gone longer than they were here on Earth. Story 58. New to my 3rd decade. Last summer, my puppy was hit by a car. I have lost many people, family, friends, and other pets, to various causes in my short life. I still dream about carrying her limp body off the road. Story 59. I am 28 years old and have experienced several difficult losses for different reasons. I lost my mother to cancer when I was 9, which meant losing my childhood and affected my mental health in many ways due to various forms of abuse and neglect throughout my childhood. I do not have a relationship with my father, who abandoned me. I have had cancer twice, which comes with a great deal of grief and loss, including losing my natural breasts and my entire stomach. These were parts of my body that I grieve deeply. Chemotherapy has also made me infertile, which brought the grief and loss of not being able to become pregnant and have my own children. A dream and goal of mine for over 10 years. Additionally, I experienced the complex grief of ending an abusive relationship that lasted 4 years. Over time, unfortunately, you become accustomed to loss. Story 60. I am 59 years old. My sister was murdered by her husband. They were in a different country than me, and getting her remains back and dealing with the police and trial was very difficult. I do not wish this on anyone. Story 61. I am 19 years old. From age 9 to 18, I watched my grandfather slowly lose his health and become depressed before he passed away. My siblings and I do not know what it is like to have a grandfather. Story 62. I am 29 years old. It had to be when one of my best friends passed away when I was 13. She was also 13 and she died from an asthma attack. Story 63. My parents and a good portion of my family belong to the Make America Great Again movement. I have no idea how to help them. I watched many of them change from intelligent and thoughtful people to unthinking individuals in just a few years. Story 64. I'm 48. The biggest challenge has to be losing my mother suddenly when I was 20 and she was 47. Reaching the age she died at and then getting older than she was is a huge mental struggle. Story 65. I'm 38. In 2003, my 11-year-old cousin lost his 4-year battle with cancer. I will never unhear the sounds that came from my aunt. In 2004, my uncle passed away. He was my mother's brother and the father of my late cousin. He and my cousin were sick at the same time. We lived near the hospital, so his 4 beautiful kids would live at my house on the weekends, and I'd care for them and my little brother while our mothers were at the hospital for a year. Within a month, my uncle's wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. Thankfully, she's still here. In 2005, my mom lost another brother to cancer. In 2007, we lost her mother, my nana. She was a single mother of 11 who migrated to Australia with 9 of her children after a horrible and abusive marriage and having already lost several children. She had a horrific and agonizing death as she was allergic to morphine and felt everything. We all took turns sitting with her for 2 weeks, but my mum never left her side. In 2009, we lost another of her sisters, my aunt, suddenly from a brain hemorrhage on the anniversary of my cousin's passing. In 2010, she lost a third brother. He was reclusive and schizophrenic, so it was traumatic when he was found. Somewhere between 2010 and 2018, the husband of my aunt who died in 2009 also passed. I have lost concept of time with that one. In 2017, we lost my older cousin, my mom's other sister's daughter, to cancer at 41. She had 4 young children. I adored her and spent so much time with that family growing up, so it hit me hard. I basically didn't function for months. 2 months later, in 2018, her mother passed, also from cancer. A year later, in 2019, we said goodbye to her dad. In 2019, my cousin, son of the aunt who died in 2009, took his own life. In 2021, I was notified that my best friend from high school had passed. Also in 2021, another cousin, brother to my cousin who passed in 2017 and the second child of their parents who passed in 2018 and 2019, also took his own life. In 2024, 3 days before Christmas, we lost the third sibling in that family, my beautiful other favorite cousin. She was 43 and died from complications as a result of her breast cancer treatment, basically a blood clot. She didn't make it to the hospital and was alone in the ambulance. She had been with her husband since they were 19 and had 2 beautiful boys, one of whom is nonverbal and autistic. My son was just diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, so it hit me particularly hard on several levels. I had refused to have children for 8 years because with these statistics, I thought I'd be crazy to. But when my cousin passed in 2017, I really started wanting a baby. When my aunt passed in 2018, they did genetic testing and found nothing, so we started talking about it. In 2020, another of Mum's brothers, father of the cousin who passed in 2003, was diagnosed with 4 primary cancers. This time, they paid attention and did more extensive testing and, in 2021, discovered he carried a rare genetic mutation found in about 70 other families worldwide. By the time I was told, I had a 9-month-old, so I basically had a nervous breakdown. Because of my mental state, I was tested immediately, but it was a 3-month process, which wasn't great. Thankfully, I don't carry it, so my child is safe. Heartbreakingly, my mother does. She is regularly screened, as the best chance of survival is to get it early. My siblings refuse to get tested. We have a number of cousins that have tested positive, but so far more are negative, thankfully. The guilt for those of us with a negative test is real and hard, particularly for the one sibling that doesn't have it. He actually wishes he did. Until now, nobody has overcome their first diagnosed cancer. My uncle currently fighting has survived the longest. Another cousin, the last surviving member of her family and daughter of my aunt who passed in 2009, is now also fighting cancer. She has twins. This is just the family in Australia. We've lost more in Italy. Our family is broken and traumatized. It's hard getting together and feeling such a profound sense of loss for all those who are missing. On top of that is very early parentification due to all of the above and also quite a while before. Therapy has helped. On my father's side, it's all dementia and mental illness. Story 66. I am 30, and it is not one specific loss but a collective experience. My parents both came from difficult families, so we did not have much contact with extended family members. Dad died when I was 2, Grandpa when I was 8, Uncle when I was 15, and Mom when I was 25. At this point, the only surviving adult in my family is my very sick stepdad. It has been hard not having someone who has already been through it all to guide me. Story 67. I'm 43, born in 1982. My story started out difficult. My dad is a Catholic priest, and my mom is 18 years younger. We were shunned. We experienced homelessness and poverty, moving from the United States to Mexico, then back to the United States. When I was 6, my mom married an abusive man. Several years followed with many hardships, including more homelessness, molestation, and rape. When you're vulnerable, predators can sense it. I was kicked out of school. I was a very bright student but didn't attend class enough due to acting out and could not finish final assignments without internet access. I became pregnant as a teenager and gave birth at 18. Since then, I have lost at least one person per year, mostly to suicide or overdose, growing up mostly in Appalachia. I went through a custody battle. I supported myself through university by stripping, which saved my life. Anyway, I made it out of those difficult times. Now I live in the south of France. I've been married for 11 years to a kind, funny doctor. I read, cook, walk my dog, and enjoy a generally calm life. My son is studying in Amsterdam and will finish his master's degree this fall. Despite everything, I love people and believe the world is more good than bad. I consider myself an optimistic absurdist, and I love being alive more often than not. Story 68. In 2021, 3 weeks before my 50th birthday, my 23-year-old son committed suicide. 3 months later, my father died from undiagnosed cancer. My mother died from cancer 1 year before. Losing a child, especially from suicide, changes you to your very core. Everything is either before Colin died or after Colin died. Story 69. My mother died unexpectedly 2 days ago. Nothing will ever compare for me. I am 36 years old. Story 70. My brother married a terrible woman who convinced him that our parents were awful, although they were average. He cut off contact with them 20 years ago. She basically ruined our family. I really hate her. Story 71. I am 32 years old. When I was 23, I was sexually assaulted by a gay man in the Navy. The experience may not have been the worst, but it was very distressing and affected me for years afterward. Story 72. I have lost both of my siblings and my father. I only have my mother and my uncle, her brother, now. I have other family, but I have not spoken to them in decades. Story 73. The death of my grandfather on Halloween night 2021 hurt me deeply. He was one of my only remaining relatives who was kind and a joy to be around. Story 74. The 5th decade was 12 when my little brother became blind. I am still trying to deal with the guilt of being the one with the good eyes. Story 75. I am 26 and I lost my father to coronavirus disease about 4 years ago. My emotions have been declining since then. I miss him so dearly that there has not been a day in 4 years when I have not thought of him. He was the only man in my life who believed in me. Story 76. I have lost many precious people in the last year and a half. I need a break from death, a brief respite. My father, grandmother, niece, father-in-law, and sister-in-law. I will miss them all. I am glad I shared some time with them and hope there may be a way to reconnect when it is my turn to pass the torch. Story 77. I am 24. I have lost a close friend, my best friend at 17, which was very difficult. I have also lost 3 grandparents, my dog passed away, and I have had a miscarriage. Story 78. I lost my best friend of 31 years when she was 35. Since she lived abroad without any family, I was the first to know. Story 79. I am 50 years old and lost my 26-year-old nephew in a car crash in 2016. Then, my 49-year-old sister was hit by a car and killed in 2018. My father died from a seizure in 2022. All were unexpected tragedies, and I still hurt every day from losing them. Story 80. I have suffered 2 great losses in my life. At age 20, my husband's best friend, essentially like a brother, took his own life. They had been friends since they were 5 years old. He stayed overnight at our house regularly. I used to joke that they were my brother husbands. I miss him dearly. At age 27, I lost my 4th child, a baby girl, in utero and had to give birth to her. I know I will face more heartbreak, but those were truly difficult times. Story 81. Probably the biggest challenge was a 6-month period a few years ago. My father had just started his business, creating financial stress. My grandmother was diagnosed with gallbladder cancer. A few weeks later, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. A family friend passed away. I could not keep my grades up. My grandmother died. Story 82. At 12 years old, I lost my cousin and my grandfather 2 months apart. I lost my best friend at 17 and 2 grandparents at 19. Story 83. I lost my cousin, who was like a brother to me, in a tragic accident. We were in our early 20s. 2 years ago, my youngest cousin, whom I helped raise, took his own life. Story 84. I broke 4 of my dad's ribs doing CPR trying to bring him back in 2001. 3 hours after that, my girlfriend broke up with me. Less than 30 days later, September 11th. I lost my mom to cancer in 2023. I took 2 weeks off from work to grieve and ended up getting fired. This is an edit from another post that I cannot find here. Sorry. Story 85. I lost my mother 20 years ago suddenly. Now I have basically lost my only sibling as well. He is still alive, but he is homeless and addicted to fentanyl, so I have basically lost him too. Story 86. I am about to turn 40. My father was arrested for solicitation of a minor when I was 15. Thankfully, he was caught in an internet sting. Mom started the divorce process and more terrible things about him came out. By the time I was 16, I felt like he was a complete stranger. His lies and misdeeds tore our lives apart. In addition to going no contact with my father, I lost contact with my younger brother. He was influenced by our father's deception and cut me out about 20 years ago. Mom and I have largely rebuilt our lives, but we will never be the same. Story 87. I am 59 years old. The first tragedy occurred when I was 4 or 5 years old. My parents did not initially believe me when I told them that a babysitter had died. My parents unintentionally taught me that I could not rely on them to protect me. I have been second-guessing myself ever since. Story 88. I am 42, almost 43. 3 years ago, my stepfather was murdered, and then 1 month later, my father passed away. I was extremely close to both. They both helped raise me, shaped who I am, and were excellent fathers. Losing them destroyed me. Story 89. I am 20 years old, and the greatest tragedy I have faced was the death of my childhood best friend, who died after battling various chronic illnesses since she was a toddler. Story 90. 46 years ago, I lost the only grandparent I have ever known. She was an extremely kind person. I loved her very much. Story 91. I'm 38 and I lost my mom when I was 13. When she passed away, it was like a part of me went with her. Story 92. I'm 30. When I was in the psychiatric hospital for the first time, a woman was stabbed in the back of the head by another patient. She managed to do that with a short pencil. Story 93. I am 56 tomorrow. I lost my wife to cancer 5 years ago, right before my birthday. Just prior, I lost my mother to complications from Alzheimer's disease. Sometimes life is difficult, then it becomes even harder. Story 94. I am 33. I lost my cousin 2 years ago to suicide. As someone who openly struggled with mental health issues and could have potentially sat with and helped him, the guilt I carry is overwhelming. It is indescribable. Seeing my aunts, uncles, cousins, and my own father in pain has been beyond sobering. Our family is forever missing someone, and that hole remains. We know it is there, and it hurts. I want to cry just sharing this. I miss you, Chris. Story 95. Soon to be 63. Lost both parents. Brother and sister, no contact. 2 special needs children with no family to oversee their care after we die. Longing to raise a typically developing child of my own. Terminated a pregnancy when I was a teenager. There is no forgiving myself. God save me. Story 96. 42 years old. I lost my parents within the last 20 years and most recently my wife 4 months ago. Life is not fair. Story 97. I am 30 years old. 10 years of witnessing constant psychosis, schizophrenia, domestic violence, and suicides. It has affected me quite a bit, admittedly. Thankfully, I have a really supportive and loving partner who has been by my side in the aftermath. Story 98. I am 21 years old. I lost my mother last year to cancer after a 5-year-long battle. She was in hospice for a whole month before she passed away. Story 99. I am in my 50s. Out of nowhere, my father left us when I was 12 to run away with another woman. I am still living with the consequences. Story 100. When I was 20, I already experienced my mother's death and my grandmother's death a year before her. I couldn't even buy myself a beer then. Since then, I had a terrible divorce that, while it went favorably for me, has been the hardest year of my life because of how awful it has been. Story 101. I am 50 years old and have lost both my parents. I watched my 2 favorite aunts die a horrible death from cancer. I went 120 hours without sleep and had a terrible experience that ended with me in a psychiatric hospital. I had a roommate who tried to harm me by putting something in my drink to make me pass out. Life has been very hard. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.